Mum, dad, son, sister. Let's go through the family tree. Hello, and welcome back to Simple-ESL. Today we are going through the family tree and family members. So, what better place to start then? Ourselves. This is you. It's me, it's you. This is going to be our point of view. So, how did we come to be? It would be our mum, which could also be mom with an O. This is usually an American way of saying this, or United States. Mom or mother. Mother is a little bit, shall we say, posh. It's not a way you would say in a conversational way. You wouldn't say mother very often. I would say, that's my mum. But who else? Who is she married to? Your dad. That is your dad. So you have your mum and your dad. That could also be father. Once again, that is a... I've used the term posh. I would say dad to describe my father. That is my dad. But you can also use father. But if they have other children, what would they be to you? They would be your sister. If they're a girl, you can have a sister. And if they have a boy, you could have a brother. So, your mum and your dad, they have children. That includes you, possibly a sister, possibly a brother. But what if they have sisters and brothers? What would you call them in English? Do any of you know? Well, if your parents had a sister, to you that would be your aunt. The example I've used is your mum having a sister. That's your aunt. If they're a boy, you would have an uncle. I'm an uncle. I've used the example here of my dad having an uncle. So if your parents have brothers or sisters, they would be an aunt or an uncle. If they had children, what would they be to you? They would be your cousin. And this can be used whether they're a girl or a boy. That's my cousin. So that's gender neutral cousin. So if your aunt and your uncle have a child, to you that would be your cousin. Now, who would be the parent to your parents? Or the parent to your parents and their brothers and sisters, your aunt and uncle? It would be your grandmother and grandfather. So, if mum is mother and dad is father, when we go to their parents, we add grand to the beginning. Grandmother, grandfather. So that's a very simple way to remember it. So you have your grandmother and your grandfather. Okay? As a group, your grandmother and your grandfather would be called your grandparents. Using the same structure, your mum and your dad would be your parents. That makes sense. We've used mother and father, added grand to make grandmother and grandfather. That means we'd add grand to parents as well. So now we can talk about them as a group. Those are my grandparents. Those are my parents. And your brother and sister would be your siblings. So you can talk about them as a group. These are my siblings, my sister and my brother. So, let's change it up a little bit. We've got the family tree there. Let's take you out. You're now in the position where your mum would have been. This will change the relationships and people's names. So your aunt would now be your sister, as it was before, because that's your sibling. Dad, well, he's not going to be your dad anymore. You're married to that person. That's your husband. So that could be husband, it could be wife, but that is now the relationship. Husband or wife. Wife is usually for a female, husband is usually for a male. Siblings have changed. So siblings, before that was sister and brother, they're no longer your sister and brother. They are your children. So it'd be daughter and son. Son, once again, for a boy, daughter for a girl. And uncle has changed. Now, this is your husband's brother. You're not a blood relation. We call this your in-law. So partner siblings are in-laws. So, if it's your husband, has a brother, it would be brother-in-law. If he has a sister, sister-in-law. And this as a group can be called the in-laws, but brother-in-law, sister-in-law. And we can see the grandparents also change. And it's a simple change, mother and father. They are the mother and father, they are the parents to you. So that means the groups would change. Siblings, they're not your siblings, those are your children now. And those are your parents. Okay? So you can see how when you move up the family tree, your relationship to people changes. So now you have a husband or a wife. You have brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws. You have daughters. You have sons. Let's play around with this idea. Got a family tree here, and this is for Jerry. Now, Jerry is a child. He has parents. He has grandparents. He has an uncle. He has an aunt. And he has siblings. So let's go through and figure out, looking at the logos, what the relationships would be. So Jerry has 2 siblings. Do we know what they are? It's a sister and a brother. Above that, we have a female and a male. That would be his mum and his dad. Now, his mum has a brother and his dad has a sister. The brother would be an uncle and the sister would be an aunt. Now, your mum and your uncle, they have parents. We can see that, a female and a male. So what would they be? So it's not parents, they are grandparents. So it would be grandmother and grandfather. It all makes sense. Let's do one more. We can see Susan's family tree here. What's on the bottom row? Just there, we have 2 females and a male. 2 girls, one boy. Do we know what the group would be called under Susan? These are her children. And she has 2 girls, 1 boy. That is daughters and a son. 2 daughters, 1 son. I've jumped the gun a little bit there. Susan is married to her husband. Susan's married to her husband. There was a male logo there. She was married to a man. It was her husband. Her husband has a sister. What would she be in the family tree? She would be an aunt. And Susan has a brother. Her brother would be an uncle. So, that would be sister-in-law and brother. Susan's brother. And to Susan, her husband's sister is her in-law, her sister-in-law. To her husband, her brother would be his brother-in-law. So you see how that works. And Susan's brother, Susan and her brother, I should say, have 2 parents. They would be her mum and her dad. So you can see how the structure of the family tree works in English. When you take parents, and then there are parents above the parents, those are grandparents. If you go above that, those are great-grandparents. You can see that someone's brother, if you marry to someone else, to them, that would be their in-law, their brother-in-law, their sister-in-law. Your children would be your daughters and your sons. And if you were one of the daughters or sons, your siblings would be your brother and your sister. So perhaps this week you could take a look at your own family tree. You could plot it out just like this. You could put yourself at the bottom. If you have brothers and sisters, put them in. If you have parents, put them in. If they have siblings, you can put in your aunts and your uncles. If you have grandparents, you can put them in and practice writing down grandmother, grandfather, and in the grouping, grandparents, mother, father, parents. And this is a good way to practice the structure of families in English and what we call people. That's the last episode for this week. As always, there is a useful vocabulary PDF in the section below that will help you with building your own family tree. So feel free to take that, download that, and have a go yourself this week. But I will see you next week with our next 2 episodes of Simple-ESL. So until then, take care.